came across an abandoned chair which was strategically stationed by the bush path. Idara tried to walk past the chair, but something seemed to draw her to it. She walked gently towards the weird-looking chair, her eyes fixated on the strange carvings on its wood. Once she approached the chair, she felt an urge to sit, and before she knew what was happening, she was sitting on the chair. Once upon a time, there lived a very stubborn girl named Idara who lived in a small village with her parents. She was extremely stubborn, and her parents did all they could to ensure that she grew up to be a very respectable girl. But Idara was not willing to listen to her parents. She was so antagonistic and never listened to whatever her parents had to say. Idara had a mind of her own and did whatever she wanted. Her rebellious nature manifested in so many ways, affecting those around her, especially her parents. One hot afternoon, Idara's father fell terribly ill, and Idara was not willing to care for him as she had somewhere to be. She was meeting up with her boyfriend Bolu, a young man who her father had warned her repeatedly about. Idara, being so headstrong, refused to stop seeing Bolu and spent the bulk of her time with him, not caring about her father's warning. That afternoon, as she prepared to leave the house to go see Bolu, her father called her to the side and pleaded with her to deliver a small package to a certain address in the village. He pleaded with Idara not to take the bush path that leads to the village market because of how dangerous it was, and Idara promised her father to take another path. She felt reluctant helping her father, but seeing how sick he was, Idara had no other option but to agree. She left the house with the box as she headed to the address her father had given to her. After walking for some minutes, Idara decided to walk through the bush path that led to the village market. It was the fastest route to her destination, and Idara was not willing to take a longer route because she knew that Dayo was waiting for her. As Idara walked briskly on the path, she was confronted by some young men who snatched the box from her hand and ran away. Idara did all she could to retrieve the box, but couldn't, as the men overpowered her and got away. She returned home and narrated everything that happened to her father, who had an instant stroke from the news. What Idara did not know was that the box her father had given to her to deliver to the said address contained all that he had ever worked for in his life. Idara watched as her father became a shadow of himself, unable to move around as he used to. Her mother, full of rage, wondered how she bettered a stubborn child like Idara. She warned Idara that her stubbornness will lead her into trouble one day if she refuses to change, and Idara, despite being remorseful for what her stubbornness had done to her father, still continued in her stubborn ways. One night, Idara decided to leave the house. Her parents had warned her on several occasions never to leave the house at night, but Idara, being the antagonistic daughter that she was, ignored her parents' warning and snuck out of the house when she knew that her parents were both asleep. Her boyfriend Dayo was waiting for her close to the village river, so Idara walked briskly to meet up with him. On her way, she came across an abandoned chair which was strategically stationed by the bush path. Idara tried to walk past the chair, but something seemed to draw her to it. She walked gently towards the weird-looking chair, her eyes fixated on the strange carvings on its wood. Once she approached the chair, she felt an urge to sit, and before she knew what was happening, she was sitting on the chair. As soon as Idara sat on the strange chair, a chilling sensation ran down her spine. She felt as though the chair was wrapping its hands around her, binding her to it. She tried to get up, but her body would not obey her commands. Panic set in, and Idara's heart began to race as she screamed out in frustration. She struggled and struggled, but the more she tried to free herself, the tighter the chair gripped her to it. Suddenly, the surroundings around her began to change. The familiar path she had been walking on disappeared and was replaced by a completely different place, which was so unfamiliar to her. Everywhere seemed so bright, and Idara stood there frozen as she wondered where she could be. Lost and confused, Idara wandered the strange land alone. There was no one in sight, so she kept walking, hoping to meet someone who could explain to her what was happening. After hours of walking, Idara felt a tap on her shoulder, and when she turned, she met a girl who had a huge basket on her head and looked terribly exhausted. Idara had not been this excited to see a person in her life before, as she quickly asked the girl who she was and where they were, and the girl introduced herself to her as Simi, saying that they were trapped in the land of the familiar. She revealed that she had been trapped there for so many years and was seeking for a way out. Idara then asked Simi why she had a heavy basket on her head, and just as Simi was about explaining the reason to her, a heavy basket appeared on Idara's head. Confused as to why she now had a basket on her head, Idara tried to put the basket down, and Simi warned her against doing so, as she revealed that Idara must carry the basket wherever she went, and on no account should she ever drop the basket, as doing so would trap her in the strange land forever. She showed Idara several people who were now trapped in the strange land because of their stubbornness. She narrated to Idara that the weight she felt in her basket was the weight of her actions on the life of those who she had wronged because of her stubbornness. Idara noticed that her basket was exceptionally heavy and immediately remembered her father, who was currently suffering from a stroke because of her stubbornness. Even her mother's warnings began to echo in her ear as Idara felt a pang of guilt for all the terrible things that she had done. No one in the land of the familiar knew what to do to free themselves, as those who regained their freedom from the land had no idea that they were leaving, as they disappeared suddenly without speaking to anyone. Idara was so terrified as she wondered what she had to do to leave the strange land. She stuck with Simi, who guided her through the strange place. For days, Idara carried the heavy basket on her head, unable to free herself from its burden. She even noticed that as the days went by, the basket was even becoming heavier and wondered why that could be. As they walked, they came across a young boy who looked extremely rich. He seemed to have just arrived the strange land and was about dropping his basket on the ground. Idara rushed to stop him, but the young boy yelled angrily at her as he asked her who she was to tell him what to do. "I do not need the basket," he said again, and Idara pleaded with the boy to not drop the basket. She explained to him that the basket was the weight of their actions and wrongdoings, which, if dropped, would trap them in the strange land forever. Just as she was about convincing the boy, an old woman approached them and told the young boy that all Idara had said was a lie. She stated that those with baskets were only out to suffer themselves and that the boy should drop the basket and be free. The young boy, confused as to what to do, decided not to drop the basket, and this agitated the old woman, who pushed the basket off from his head. Immediately, the old woman let out a very terrifying laughter as she disappeared into thin air with the young boy. Idara and Simi were so petrified as they held their basket tightly to avoid anyone forcing it down. They walked briskly, fearing what might happen to them next. Tired and exhausted, they came across a strange stream that looked exactly like the stream in Idara's village. This brought back so many memories, and Idara began to plead with her parents for forgiveness. She remembered all the times that her father warned her not to do a certain thing, but she blatantly went against his instructions, damning every consequence. The weight of the basket on her head made her heart so heavy as she hoped to get a chance to right her wrongs. As they stood by the stream, Idara and Simi noticed something strange happen. The stream mysteriously turned into a reflective surface like a mirror. In the reflection, they saw scenes from their past, moments of disobedience, stubbornness, and the pain that they had caused to those around them. Idara saw herself ignoring her father's pleas, defying her mother's warnings, and the moment her father had a stroke. The reflective stream showed them the weight of their actions in a way that they had never fully understood before. Idara stood there heartbroken as tears poured down her eyes. She realized the pain she had caused and begged for forgiveness, not just from her parents, but from everyone she had wronged in her life. As she wept, the basket on her head began to feel lighter. Simi, witnessing Idara's transformation, followed suit as she asked for forgiveness for her own misdeeds. The baskets on their heads continued to lighten until they were almost weightless. They looked at each other as a bright light enveloped them, and Idara found herself back in her village, standing alone by the village stream. Idara could not believe her eyes as she decided to head back home. Shockingly, she caught sight of her boyfriend Dayo with another girl by the stream and could not believe what she was seeing. Idara could not believe how quickly Dayo moved on to another girl after she went against her father's wishes to be with him. Heartbroken and sad, Idara rushed home and met her mother, who was sitting on a chair and weeping. She rushed to find out why and realized that her dear father had just passed. The grief and regret Idara felt at that moment were overwhelming. She fell to the ground and wept aloud as her tears flowed uncontrollably. She had lost her father, a man who had always tried to guide her, despite her stubbornness. The fact that her actions led to his death broke Idara's heart into a million pieces. Idara, seeing how broken her mother was, promised to change her ways, and from that day on, she ensured that she heeded to her mother's counsel and dedicated her time to helping her mother heal from their loss. Her time in the land of the familiar taught her so many lessons, and Idara did everything within her power to make amends. The lesson to be learned from this story is that our actions all have consequences. Learn to heed to the counsel of your elders, as most often than not, what they see when standing up, even if you stand at the top of an Iroko, you would not see it. I hope you enjoyed the story.
Like, subscribe and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.